Welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. And if you're watching on our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated, I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner. And joining me like he always does following a Carolina football or basketball game, THI publisher Andrew Jones, who you can probably tell by his backdrop right now, is in Charlottesville following Carolina's 44-41 loss to Virginia. AJ, tough night for the Heels overall. A lot of self-inflicted wounds. We talked about that after the Florida State game in our Three Things video, and a lot in the week following that defeat. But bad penalties, some really unfortunate fumbles that cost Carolina. It was just another night full of self-inflicted wounds for the Tar Heels.
Somebody asked, I can't remember who it was, asked Sam Howell after the game about that play at the end of the first half, and if they could have maybe handled that a little bit differently and gotten some points that could have been a difference in the game. And Sam, to his credit, accepted responsibility for the offense kind of messing that up a little bit, but also then went on to note several other things that went wrong that were also could have been the difference of the game had they not gone wrong. And what he's basically saying is what we all saw. They made so many mistakes, and they're big mistakes. It's not just little body punching mistakes. They made crucial mistakes. You put a guy, your sure hands guy in there in a punt, and he drops the punt, and Virginia gets the ball and they score several plays later. The Sam fumble, he's being pressured again. I have no idea how many pressures that UVA had on him, but they sacked him 5 times.
A lot.
And that, an easy touchdown possession, 30 yards or whatever that was. Carolina gave them a lot of opportunities to score, but even when they didn't, UVA still ran the ball down Carolina's throats. They struggled once again with a quarterback who could run. They knew that UVA was going to throw the multiple quarterback sets out there. Carolina didn't really respond too well to it. And, what can we say about special teams? The drop punt, but then the fake punt. You had to know that was probably coming. They've seen that. I'm sure that they've seen that on film before. And they didn't make the stop. And it wasn't a terrible play. It wasn't like a busted play that UVA, picked up a bunch of yardage, but it didn't matter. They only need to get a few yards, get the first down, and basically end the game. So there were a lot of mistakes, some really crucial penalties. There were big penalties, 15-yarders on several UVA scoring drives. A big penalty ruined a Carolina drive. Sacks allowed. I mean, the things that this team has had issues with all season, they had issues with tonight. Didn't have great pass protection, not really good stopping the run. There was something they haven't been consistent with. And, of course, special teams mistakes. And they didn't force turnovers. They got one. Gilmore made a great play getting that turnover, which they ended up scoring after that. It was a big play, but they needed more. Especially on a night when you're shooting yourself in the foot. You've got to find ways to make up for it. And they didn't do it. This defense they scored 2 points this year on the conversion return by Morrison. And let me point something out too, Jacob. Of all the things that have gone wrong, they had a lot of progress last week against NC State against the run. 210 yards or something like that for UVA night. Virginia came into this game number 75 in the nation, averaging 23.8 points a game. The Wahoos had 27 with like 4 minutes left in the half.
I know.
Okay?
Wow.
They were 80th in the country in red zone offense. They were perfect in the red zone tonight. So Carolina just didn't get it done defensively. The offense hurt itself enough that when your offense is supposed to score more than 44 points to win, and you only end up with 41, well, you can trace to several mistakes that were made. So credit UVA for playing well. Wahoos deserve to win this game. This is 2 straight road losses. The teams that had 1 win going into it, and they were self-inflicted losses. So the Tar Heels have a lot to clean up, and they're going to spend the rest of this week cleaning that kind of stuff up. But it's going to be a process. It's going to take a little bit longer. This is the 19th game. I'm counting those games. It's the 19th game of the Mac Brown era, and there's a lot of fixing for this team to do, and they know it, they saw it, and they're going to see it in the film room tomorrow as well.
Yeah, definitely a lot of negatives to take away from tonight from the performance against Virginia if you're Carolina. But let's focus on a couple positives real quick, AJ. Sam Howell, career high 443 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. De'Ami Brown was great tonight. He was fantastic again against Virginia. He had a very similar performance in Chapel Hill against the Hoos last year, but 240 yards, 11 receptions, 3 touchdowns. I mean, if you're going to take a few positives, Carolina's offense as a whole played really well, but, Sam Howell and De'Ami Brown were connecting all night.
Well, Sam and De'Ami played really well. They didn't have much of a ground game. They were under 100 yards rushing for the first time this season.
Yeah.
Javonte Williams and Michael Carter weren't really factors in the game.
Mhm.
And Diami was there all night for Sam. I don't know what his total yard. I think he had 240 receiving
Yeah,
yards.
240
His
receiving.
brother had a 64, 66, or 64 yard catch and run touchdown. So the Browns were good
Yeah, they had a
targets
good
for
night
Sam tonight. Yeah, Sam had a couple mistakes, the fumble when he got sacked, and then I don't know. They charged the fumble on that play at the end of the first half to Sam. The official scorer did. That's just a play that has to be converted.
Mhm.
So all blame goes around. But other than that, Sam was amazing.
He was.
And we've seen him in these last two road games when he's under duress. From a physical standpoint with constant pass rush, but also having to bring his team back. You can't score more than one touchdown on a possession. And you really got to be impressed at how he approaches those drives. He's not trying to score two touchdowns on one possession. He's going to get them into the end zone once, get the ball back, try to get them in there again, and just keep doing that. And he's going to be so good eventually because he's got some of those factors, some of those intangibles, and that's one of them. And we saw what he did in Tallahassee late and giving them a chance to almost win that game. He did the same thing here tonight. When he had to be really, really, really good, he was really, really, really good. Yeah. And so was Diami. By the way, Diami in his last two games has like 345 yards receiving, and I think he's got 18 receptions. He was big against UVA last year, by the way. Kept getting behind the defense, and he did that tonight. So those two guys help put it in position where if they got to stop late. And by the way, going back to the first thing, 9-minute drive. Yeah. They had to get a stop, and they gave up a 9-minute drive. Yeah. So, those two guys put them in position to actually have a chance to win late.
For sure. AJ, during the week, a big focus for Mac Brown and some of his press conferences was making sure that this away game was different than what Florida State was like. He even talked about how they changed some of their travel plans and preparations up to avoid that. I think we saw a similar performance in a different way. Carolina obviously didn't get behind by a lot like they did against Florida State in the first half, but it was a similar effort in a lot of different respects to what we saw against Florida State. And like we said, Mac Brown tried to avoid that, but ultimately it ended up being eerily similar in a lot of ways.
Going on the road, even when there's no or few fans in the stadium, is still hard. It's hard for a program that is still figuring things out. Like I said, 19 games into the Mac Brown era. You got to learn how to win on the road. You got to learn how to prepare. You got to learn how to deal with adversity on the road. And I think that they kind of, when they get hit sometimes, it kind of takes a while for them to recover. But the sudden change defense issue, I think, is an example of that. I asked Chaz tonight, how do you fix that? And basically just got to play better. That's pretty much what it is. And as far as coming up here differently, it's easier to bus here instead of busing to Tallahassee because of the distances. But in the end, you just got to play better. They have the game plan. Kids have got to execute better. You cannot make the kinds of mistakes that some of the kids made tonight, either penalties or, you just got to execute a little bit better on both lines of scrimmage. They have to protect Sam. I mean, you go look at my 5 keys to winning this game. One of them, I said, you got to keep Sam clean. Sam was dirty at the end of the game tonight. So you go on the road, you lose to two teams that had one win going in and were struggling offensively, and both offenses got well against this defense. That's an issue. And that's an issue that needs to be fixed. They played 3 true road games this year, 3 road games. And they played teams that are not super prolific offensively. BC had 16 points at the half. FSU had 31. Virginia had 27. And Carolina had to make a play at the end with a 2-point conversion interception by Morrison to win at BC. And they lost and fell behind big in the other two. They were behind 24 at FSU. They were behind 21 here. So I think basically what we've seen in 6 games at Jacob is that the high end, when this team plays well, they're really, really good. And they've got spectacular parts. The low end, they're not good. And those maybe they don't have enough parts to overcome when they're not playing well. They got to have somebody on defense that can pull them out of something. And they haven't shown that yet. And they have some guys there that can do that. They just haven't done it enough. So 4-2, I still think I was talking to somebody before the game today, and a Carolina fan, and I told them, I said, they can lose this game tonight. Like, no way. And I said, yeah, they can. I said, but he said, well, if they do, then that means that there's no progress made. And I said, that's not true, because if you go back 14 months, and say, okay, this is where they're going to be after 19 games, 6 games into this season, you would have taken it and run to the bank laughing.
Easily.
The amount of progress that they've made is unbelievable. But it just goes to show you that you cannot snap a finger a few times and suddenly become a top 10 team. It takes time. It takes a lot of learning. It takes a lot of hard nights like this, like the one they had in Tallahassee. And you eventually start stringing the good ones together, like last week against NC State. They have the staff. They have the head coach who's proven he can do that at multiple places. And they have a staff in place that can do it. And they have enough decent players. And they're going to have more coming in that eventually they're going to get it right. But this is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. You know, if they were flared up overnight, then remember when Rutgers was ranked like number 2 in the country about 10 years ago? They crashed to the earth and hadn't gotten up yet. You know what I mean? When you flare up fast, you come down fast. So taking a steady climb. And sometimes you got to dodge stuff coming down on you when you make that climb. And tonight they had a lot of boulders rolling down at them. They got to get out of the way. You got to keep moving forward. And that's probably the lesson from tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with the progress, AJ. There's no doubt that Carolina as a program has made progress since Mac Brown took over a couple years ago. But tough night for the Heels nonetheless in Charlottesville, 44-41 loss for the Tar Heels. That's going to do it for us. AJ, thanks for joining me tonight. Safe travels back to Raleigh. And as always, guys, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like it. Be sure to share it. We'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.
Thanks.